Welcome back. Thanks for sticking around to dig a bit deeper into this new federal housing law. Elizabeth, New Mexico leads the country in the number of manufactured and mobile homes per capita. How does this new law affect those regulations?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Nash. New Mexico, just a little data, New Mexico, 15% of our housing stock is manufactured housing. The national average is 5%. So we're triple the national average in our reliance on affordable housing, on manufactured housing. And as we mentioned earlier, manufactured housing very often is what housing policy folks consider organic affordable housing, meaning that it is not receiving any type of subsidy. It's housing that costs less and is affordable to lower income people, and that lower income people are often living in without additional subsidy from government entities. So for New Mexico and across the country, but especially in New Mexico, it's incredibly important that we recognize the role that manufactured housing is playing in our state and make sure that that stays available for folks. The other thing that's really critical about manufactured housing is that it is as common or more common in rural areas as it is in urban areas. So it is not an urban-rural housing issue. It affects everyone. Absolutely.
So what does this new law do for them?
This new law does a bunch of things that are, in my opinion, pretty exciting. A lot of it is is aimed at making it easier for homeowners to finance manufactured housing. So one of the really kind of cool things is because manufactured housing is less expensive than site-built housing, kind of paradoxically, it can be a lot harder for folks to get traditional mortgage loans for that housing because the fees and points that mortgage lenders assess are based on kind of a set schedule where it's more profitable for traditional mortgage lenders, to make loans for higher cost housing. And so one of the important things that, again, it starts as a pilot program in the Act is to create incentives and an avenue forward for traditional loans, FHA-insured loans for properties worth $100,000 or less. Okay. Traditionally, those folks have not been able to get traditional loans because they're just not profitable for lenders. And so that's driven a lot of New Mexicans into real estate contracts or kind of alternative financing that is just rife for abuse and hardship. So that's a wonderful change that we can expect to see here.
Well, and you talk about wonderful changes, and earlier in the show, a lot of this is sounding really good. Mm-hmm. I am curious, though, are you all seeing, as experts in housing and housing law, places where this is going to either fall short or at least be limited in its impact here in New Mexico?
Sure. Yes.
How so?
I think yes. Well, again, an awful lot of this is pilot programs. Regulations haven't been written yet. We don't know if these pilot programs will ever even reach us in New Mexico. So there's uncertainty there, right? Which I was talking with Isidoro before the show, and we were saying this is sort of throw the pasta against the wall and see what sticks kind of thing. So some of that pasta won't stick, and it sounds great, but it may not play out. There are also policy implications to many of the provisions that I think Isidoro and I might have differences of opinions about whether they're good changes or not. And some of those involve the streamlining, or I would say deregulating certain parts of the housing market in order to expedite new development, and also continued really strong reliance on private investors to drive our affordable housing supply in our country, which has been kind of the MO of HUD and federal housing policy since 1980 or so. So that's intensifying, and I think there's a lot of debate we could have about whether that's ultimately a fool's errand or detrimental.
And I think, in addition to that, while we're optimistic about it, also very realistic that it's not going to happen overnight. Mm-hmm. I think there's all of the new programs. I think there's a total of 12 new programs, and all with the exception of one of them is actually funded. So Congress will have to come back and fund those programs. There was bipartisan support in both chambers for this legislation, so I think I'm hopeful that there'll be funding for those programs. Secondly, I think there's like 32 different regulations or reforms that'll happen across many different entities. A total of 17 different entities that are involved in this.
Wow.
So the collaboration and the reporting and working together.
It's complex.
It's complex. One of the positive things about this bill is that it does have some deadlines within it. I think some initial preliminary data to be reported in January of 27, and then in July of 27, then enactment of the new regulation. So I think it'll have a pretty good pace for federal government to get some of these things in place, but it's not going to happen overnight. But I think it's definitely a step in the right direction.
So it's not going to happen overnight. What are some local and state stopgaps, basically, while we wait for stock to increase, wait for the impact of this federal bill? What can happen locally in the meantime?
I would say that not even as a stopgap. I would say that anybody at the state or local or tribal level that is involved in housing needs to be examining this with a fine-tooth comb, the act, because there's work to be done now at the state, tribal, and local government levels to be ready to be able to apply for some of these pilot programs. So for example, some of the pilot programs give priority to jurisdictions that have amended their zoning laws in certain ways. So if you want to participate in a pilot program, then it's time to look at your zoning laws again and see what you can do. There's a lot of education for renters, for landlords, for home buyers, for veterans. So a lot of education can begin now to say these changes are coming. You should, next time you go talk to a lender, ask about VA loans. There are some interesting changes there. There's a lot that can be done.
Now's the time to start preparing.
Yes.
Isidoro, does Housing New Mexico have the resources it needs to meet this moment and meet the demand?
I'll tell you that there's always room, a lot of room for additional resources. There's a huge housing need out there, and we're grateful for the funds that we do have, and especially what the state legislature allocates to us, but there's a need for more resources.
As we're talking about the government assisting folks in these ways in staying sheltered, being able to access homes, Elizabeth, I'm curious if we could zoom out a little bit. What do you see as the responsibility of a government to make sure that people are housed? What is the right balance of private and public investment?
That's a fantastic question, Ash, and I think we could talk about that for hours and hours. I'm not sure we have time. In my personal view, the responsibility of the government is to ensure the general health, safety, and welfare of the population, and that includes housing. And so that means managing resources in a way that best meets the needs of the greatest number of people. When it comes to housing policy, like I mentioned, for the last more than 20 years now, 30 years, 40 years, the thinking has been that private market forces are more efficient and better able to do that than government agencies like HUD. And so there's been increasing efforts to pull in private market forces to invest in and then own affordable housing.
But has that proven to be true?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, I think. Certainly, programs like the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit and the Opportunity Zones program, which is much newer and kind of modeled on the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit in certain ways, has been very successful in creating money for housing and the development of affordable housing. But that housing has been affordable for higher income, low income people around 60% of the area median income.
It's not helping the most vulnerable.
It's not helping the most vulnerable. And that's to be expected, quite honestly, because ultimately private investors are investing in housing because they're making money off of doing it.
So if it's a profit enterprise, it's not incentivized to help the most vulnerable, but the government may be better positioned to do that kind of work.
Some view would say yes. My view would be to say the reason that private investors are putting money into low-income housing tax credits and opportunity zones, which are all expanded in the Act, is because they're making money and they want to make money as safely as possible. But their goal is not necessarily to house the lowest income people. And the alternative would be, and they're doing it because they are shielding income from taxes. So money that they would be paying taxes on, they're instead putting into these tax deferral or tax avoidance programs that create housing. We could, of course, just collect those taxes and then use the money in other ways to build housing, to do other things.
Elizabeth, I think you're right. We could talk about this forever, but I appreciate your insights, and Isidoro as well, on this bill and how it might show up here in New Mexico. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.